All right, let's see. Is this thing working? Maybe. Let's try and. All right, here we go. So, if any of you guys were like I was when you got close to interviewing, you were really nervous about briefing Jepps and Jepps in general, and just really instruments in general, because I was an Apache guy, and believe it or not, Delta model Apache guys don't spend a lot of time in the clouds or doing instruments in general. But I'm going to give you a quick rundown of some stuff that will be helpful to you when you get to your interview and hopefully beyond once you get started in the whole airline world. Number one, if you're military, you get free Jepp charts if you didn't already know that. I'm going to include this link below, but it's through the NGA. You basically just register for an account. They'll send you an email with login information, and it's going to give you, as long as you have a .mil account, I should clarify, and it's going to give you a view, something like this. So this is the chart viewer for Jepps. You come up here in the top, you type in whatever airport you want, like for example, Dallas-Fort Worth, and it'll spit out all the 8 million Jepp charts that are there for each one of those. The index on the left, procedure, revision date, all that good stuff. And for every single one you want to look at, let's say, for example, we just want to see the Class B airspace for Dallas-Fort Worth. It blows it up here nice big. You can, make it bigger, size it, however you want to do. Look at all this stuff. It's a lot easier to view in a PDF format. So what I did when I was getting ready to interview and when I was time building is I would build my routes, and I would actually go through and get Jepp charts for those applicable approaches and airports and whatnot from Jepps as well. So you can go down here, like I've built this is all Charlotte stuff that I've actually attached in the Facebook post, but you come here and you can actually just make a route pack. So you can build a new route pack, or you can add to previous ones, like that's the one I've already got. So if I want to make a new route pack here, you can see it adds it down there. So now I've got a new route pack for Dallas. I can add that, I can add this, add whatever I want. So I can just start spitting new, procedures into this little route pack. When you're done, you just go print, and it'll give you a nice little print jobber here that'll spit it out in a PDF format. And you can print that, take it in the airplane with you, and use it to practice read. Obviously, arrivals and departures are kind of hard to practice if you're not in a jet, but at least the approaches and taxi diagrams, stuff like that. So that's how you get access to Jepp charts for free if you have a military .mil account. The next thing I wanted to show you guys real quick, if you're looking for a good place to start for studying Jepps, there's two things I would recommend. There's a bunch of them out there, but the two that helped me the most were the Jepson Introduction, which I've introduced that link as well. It's basically a legend for every single chart in Jepps. If you have any questions on what specific things mean in each one of these charts, it breaks it down Barney style. It gives you an idea of a lot of the gotchas and questions that might get asked on an interview. It is a lot of information, everything from like, why is that an oval? And that's an oval with a little square on it. It might seem like not really that useful of information, but you'd be surprised some of the questions that might get asked on an interview. And if they're getting to that point where they're asking those kind of questions, that's probably a good sign. They may just be wanting to see how much you really know. But you always want to be as ready as you can be and try to impress them. If they ask you some of these off-the-wall questions and you know the answers, that's going to impress them that much more. So this is the introduction. I've included that link as well. It's got a lot of really good text information as well on the different plan views and all the different parts of the chart. So that's introduction. And then I would highly recommend, if you have time, this is pretty in-depth, but AOPA back in like late 90s, I guess it was, they put out a clinic, which is still very applicable today. It's like 20-something pages, but it's the chart clinic series that's produced by AOPA, and it's got some really good information there. Each one covers different sections, everything from minimum altitudes, mileage, changeover points on these different types of sectionals, different types of intersections, and it goes really in depth. I would download I had them all in a PDF, and I spent a lot of time reading through these when I had time, and it helped me familiarize myself with Jepps. So I would recommend the introduction, this guy, and the chart clinics. Get your Jepp account set up so you can actually log in through your .mil and print those off for yourself. And I just want to go over real quick. A lot of guys stress out about the briefing and approach briefing, and it's really, I know it can be kind of intimidating. Let me see if I lost it here. Here we go. It can be kind of intimidating, but it shouldn't be. You know, it's a lot of information, but once you kind of familiarize yourself with what all's in the approach chart, it's really not that bad. And another thing that a lot of people don't realize or understand is that whenever we brief approaches in the actual airlines, we won't brief just an approach. Usually we'll do what's called a want brief, at least with SkyWest, where it's for that either departure or arrival. For departure, for example, we'll brief the entire the weather, the airport, NOTAMs, and threat is what want breaks down into. And we'll cover all that in a very brief brief. It shouldn't take more than like a minute or two. Another big problem that myself included, a lot of new guys have is we'll spend 5 or 10 minutes on a brief. Sometimes that might be necessary if the weather's really bad or if there's some crazy like departure procedure for single engine departure. You know, there's certain times where you may have to have a little bit longer brief, but typically the entire brief from briefing the weather, talking about where you're at the terminal, how you're going to taxi to the runway, the type of runway, how long it is, you know, your departure procedure, restrictions on the departure, NOTAMs that'll affect you getting out or getting back in if you have an emergency, and the highest threat and your mitigation for that threat. Shouldn't take more than about a minute or two at most, depending on, you know. But here's just for an example, here's a Jepp chart. A lot of guys ask about, you know, they're like, well, I'm going to get asked to brief a Jepp chart, and I have no idea. Luckily, Jeppson, I think now that I've been using it for a while, makes a little bit more sense on how they organize their information. And really, it is just starting from the top and working your way down. This is the ILS or localizer runway 18 right for Charlotte, chart 11-4 dated 18 May 18. Localizer 10.15 is in both localizers with a final approach course of 183 degrees. Glide slope intercept J-Hunt at 3,000 with the ILS DA of 944, which will get us 200 feet above the runway. Airport elevation 748, touchdown zone elevation 744 with an MSA all around the Charlotte VOR of 3,800 feet. And then as you come down here, if it'll work for me, there we go. Maybe. Technical difficulties. All right, we're at Cat C, so we'll need the RVR of 1,800 or a half mile for this approach with all the lighting system operational. We can expect to see ALSIF 2 lighting system with PAPI on the right. If we don't break out at the bottom, published miss is going to be a climb to 1,200, climbing straight ahead to 1,200, then a climbing right turn to 4,000 outbound on the Charlotte VOR radial 250 to Stull intersection and hold, and then continue and climb and hold to 4,000, or as directed by ATC, if otherwise. And that's pretty much it. There's a really good chance that some of these are going to have some notes or remarks on that you may want to touch on too. They'll have some restrictions, you know, or may say some of these will actually, we all know that, and this is not a class on how to, you know, IFR rules or instrument rules, you know, that's we'd spend all day on that, but there's a lot of little gotchas that they may be, and I've seen some of you talking about this. What does that C mean? What if you know, we know that to shoot the approach, you really just need this visibility, but what if there's a thing here that says ceiling required? Because there are some of those out there that have that. What if they tell you the glide slope is out, but you have DME? So which one of these 3 charts would you be able to use, you know? Well, I can fix, you know, can I fix Silov or not? If I can't fix Silov and the glide slope's out, then I know I'm going to have to go all the way over here to this, you know, this guy. And then now ALS is out, so now I'm stuck with this guy. So just understanding, you know, generally what these, you know, different sections of the chart mean, and some of the kind of gotchas that they may ask. This is a really popular one that I hear people talk about a lot. Where is the final approach fix on this? And it depends on, you know, what kind of approach you're doing and a couple other things. But say we're shooting the ILS, you know, where's my final approach fix? Well, should be at minimum, I'm going to mess this up and I'm going to get made fun of, I'm sure, but minimum altitude at glide slope intercept should be your final approach fix. If it were a localizer, then it would be the Maltese cross and the J hunt. So um, being able to talk through those little minute differences, why does this have a V here and an M here? Well, this is, is this a VDP and this a missed approach? What do those mean? Little things like that may be talking points during your interview. And it all depends on your interviewer too, because some guys are more in depth than others. Everyone has their, own specific chart that they like to talk about that has certain gotchas. But that's really it. The brief should really only take you a minute or two at most. The entire want brief, I'll run through one real quick just as an example to give you an idea. So let's say we're going out of Charlotte. So we would start with the weather, right? So information kilo or whatever it is current. Winds are 060 at 3 knots. Good visibility. Good ceilings. Temps 12. No anti-ice will be required. Altimeter is 3028. Let's see. We start from our terminal and work our way out, right? So we'd go to the 10-9 for the taxi. We'd talk through our taxi. Pushback from E-terminal, we can expect around, we can expect taxi instructions to 24, and then out Golf, runway 5, Echo for runway 36 center. You would talk through if you had any, hot spots or anything during that taxi instruction or any other expected conflicts. Runway 36 center, full length of 10,000 feet. Aborts prior to V1 will be, as previously briefed, or with the engine failure, fire, master warning, whatever your SOP tells you to abort for. Sorry, his phone just rang at me. Aborts prior to V1 will be, X, Y, Z. After V1, we can expect direct turn heading, 357, flat protraction altitude of 1,000 feet. You talk quickly through time versus no time threats. If it's a no time threat, what you're going to do versus if it's a time threat. Speed mode, nav mode on climb out, or speed mode, heading mode, talking about automation levels, what you're going to be using for automation. At that point, we would transition to the departure, which we should have already reviewed. Normally, you'll review the departure in your FMS and make sure everything's set up correctly. But we would briefly review the departure. All right, for the departure, we can expect a turn to the left 330 degrees at 1260 or whatever the 36 center at. Climb heading 003 to 1260, then on heading of 330, or as assigned by ATC with a top altitude of 8,000 feet. Restrictions: 250 knots to 10,000 feet, and then 280 knots or until advised by ATC. Because typically we would transition to 290, but we use 280 because that's the restriction. NOTAMs, any NOTAMs that would affect either getting out or also getting back in if you have an emergency, and then the highest threat and then what we're going to do to mitigate it. So for Charlotte or whatever, you might talk about complex taxi instructions, or if you're worried about getting a runway change, because that happens a lot, and there's a lot of stuff we have to do when we get a runway change, like performance numbers and stuff we have to change. And those are, really easy. If you get a last minute runway change and you're trying to rush and you forget to put those in the box, you can cause yourself a lot of trouble. But that's it. That should only take a minute or two at most. That was kind of long-winded, but you get the idea. A brief is supposed to be exactly that, brief. Some other pages that are really handy. This whole thing is in this PDF is going to be in the link. But if any of you guys ever heard of Attention All Users page, this talks about certain points or certain things that you have to meet for to do this RNAV departure. They might talk about low visibility taxi charts. All this stuff is covered in those clinics, or at least the majority of it is. If it's not in the clinic, it's in the introduction, and it'll walk you through what all the lines and colors mean. For the airport info, I don't see any on here. This isn't a good example. Usually there's a big arrow pointing somewhere that'll, that's the highest altitude in that area. What is it'll be on approach. So it's like for this one, what does this little arrow mean? Well, that's the tallest obstacle in the area. Stuff like that. So it's really good. Just review the introduction, review those clinic charts, and then practice briefing. Get a friend to help you practice going through briefing the approach, touching on each one of the highlights using the brief strip, and just trying to get comfortable, reading through and understanding what these or these little step down thingies. Because man, I'm telling you what, I came over from the Apache world. I had no clue. I looked at this thing the first time, and I was a little intimidated. But once you just do it, use them for time building. Once you get the training, really by the end of training, I was pretty comfortable with them, and I still learn stuff every day. I mean, there's so many little things that there's a lot of smart guys out there that'll probably tell you all the little gotchas and stuff that they do on the interviews. But that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Send me a message on Facebook or email or text or whatever. I'll be happy to help you wherever I can. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys at RTAG. See you later. Oh, actually, real quick, this is actually from our SOP. I just wanted to show you guys just an example. This is what our departure want brief, some of the stuff we talk about. I'm not going to read it. You can pause and read it yourself. But just touches on highlights on what we would, specific situations for that. And then here's the arrival want brief. Similar but different, just stuff that we talk about in our briefing. And again, that want brief is only going to be a minute or two at most. All right. Thanks, guys. Good luck. I know you guys are going to crush all the interviews, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at RTAG. See you later.